Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I was asked to come tonight. Thank you so much for having me. I was asked to come tonight with regards to the demise of Hazrat Khadija, which was just a couple of days ago. There's a lot to say about Hazrat Khadija, and I'm certainly no historian, and I'm not qualified to speak on her life. However, one thing we all know is the critical role that Hazrat Khadija played in the building of Islam by virtue of her marriage to the Prophet. Hazrat Khadija was known in two ways for this amount of support that she gave to the Prophet that helped him get the message out that he needed to get out. One that everybody knows is the financial support that she provided to empower him to be able to do the things that he needed to do to spread the prophecy. The other thing that people know about her is the relationship that she built with the Prophet that had empowered him to go out into the world in the most difficult years of his prophecy, dealing with just horrific conditions by society, but come into a home where there was peace, tranquility, love, compassion, and affection. Without that, without having a place for the Prophet to go, the reason she played such a big role was because we know how much he loved her for all that she did for him, and not just financially, but emotionally and with all the compassion and support that she provided for him. And so a lot of us compare modern marriages and we say, well, you know, we should act like that. When we see that marriage, we should recognize the qualities that were viewed in that marriage and we should try to duplicate that. The same goes with the marriage of Imam Ali and Hazrat Fatima. We always say we should try to act like these two within a relationship and within a marriage. But we don't talk as much about the process to find somebody to empower us to have that kind of relationship. So inshallah, today I'll talk a little bit about the process of marriage in dealing with the modern challenges that we have today. There's not that many people of marriage age here, but certainly there's a lot of parents. And this discussion is very important for parents because parents need to understand what the modern challenges for their children are in order to help them and make sure that as a family unit, they're raising daughters and sons who are ready to be optimal spouses and family members, and that they are treating the marriage process accordingly to optimize the chances of success. We do have a very serious challenge today in the spouse selection process. In my 7 years that I've been married, and given that I got married so young, I have had a lot of friends who have come to me or my husband. The males go to my husband and ask me about females, and the females come to me and ask my husband about males or whatever it might be. We've seen a lot of examples of people trying to get married. And we've seen how difficult it has become today to find a spouse. And what I've noticed is that there's a disconnect, a major disconnect between our Islamic principles of marriage and our modern processes of obtaining marriage. And we have to start trying to reconcile those differences. So I'm going to go into 3 areas or issues that I see in the process of obtaining marriage, and inshallah can help facilitate a better spouse selection process. The first is timing for seeking spouse. The second is attitude towards marriage or seeking a spouse. And the third is that actual process of what actually must get done in pursuing the spousal selection. Now, I have to give a disclaimer. This is obviously a very personal, family by family, individual by individual process, and I'm certainly not making any generalities of the way things are unequivocally have to be done in every circumstance. This is just what I've seen to work in many situations or not work in many situations, and it's not intended to be a one-size-fits-all. And if I offend anybody or give a different opinion than what your family would do, I apologize, but let's have the discussion about it, inshallah, get somewhere productive with it. So in the first subject is timing for seeking a spouse. A lot of people, we often hear the phrase, get married when you're young. And when we hear that phrase, it's a bit of a conflict in terms of what a lot of our cultural standards are for when you get married is when you reach a certain milestone. So some people will say it's when you're X years old is when you're ready for marriage. Or they'll say it's when you're done with your education or you've established a career or you've bought a house. There are various milestones that people set up on the one hand, and the other hand, it's just get married when you're young. These two different dynamics that are constantly going on. Here's my first controversial thing that I might say. These benchmarks, whether it's age or career, whatever it might be, or buying a house, they're not relevant to getting married and having a successful marriage. They might have some impact. They certainly do have some impact. But that is not what determines whether or not you should be getting married or not, is whether you achieved this milestone or are at a certain age or whatever it may be. The timing for marriage should not revolve around this static, irrelevant factor of this milestone. I propose that the timing of marriage is an individual by individual basis. The question is, am I ready to get married, or is my son or daughter ready to get married? And that means emotionally, that does mean financially, that does mean intellectually. And one has to look at the individual level of maturity of the person, determine if they or yourself, if they are ready to get married. Now, I don't mean by maturity that, oh, you joke around so much or you like to have fun, so you're not mature enough to get married. I've been married 7 years and I still act like a child. And it's not about whether or not you kind of come out of the jokiness or the fun in life, or marriage is not like, okay, you're ready when you're done having fun. What I mean by maturity is that you have to ask, am I mature enough to reflect on myself and improve myself every day? Am I mature enough to forgive another person? Am I mature enough to prioritize this marriage over anything else? Am I mature enough to have compassion and to take care of another person? And especially for men, am I mature enough to take care of financial responsibility for better or worse? So when someone is ready to get married and that they've attained these levels of maturity, or they feel that they're getting towards those that mindset of maturity, it can be very dangerous, I believe, to discourage somebody from pursuing the spousal process based on superficial milestones. The danger of withholding the marriage discussion or entering the marriage process for somebody who is ready and mature enough to begin that process, in many instances, you see it will impact a person's spirituality. Of course, on the one hand, everybody knows a delay in marriage can lead to sin, and that is its own major problem. And in those conditions where sin is at risk, it becomes wajib to seek marriage. But aside from that, there is a lot of instances that I have seen where somebody's ready for marriage, they're discouraged, or they've been told, or that it's been in their mind that I can't get married until I have X achievements, or I have my own home, or whatever it might be. But the danger is it stifles religious growth. A good marriage is a partnership for spiritual growth. A good marriage, they always say marriage is half your deen. And I believe that's because through marriage you can really achieve the best version of yourself when you are with somebody else that helps challenge you, helps hold you accountable, that you can have interesting dialogue and discussion with, where somebody can support you through the process when you have doubts, to go through it together and to improve each other. And so if we hold somebody back from accomplishing these types of growth in their faith, it could be very damaging for a person who's ready to do that, but you're telling them no, not yet. especially in the society where we are bombarded with imagery of things that are not halal. Everywhere we go, everything we see, there are challenges that are left and right. Thank you so much. There are challenges left and right that we are dealing with. And marriage could be a solution to so much of that. But we are holding it back for a milestone that does not have a bearing on whether or not somebody is ready for that marriage. Now, we have this stage where somebody's ready to get married. But the question comes, what do you do before that stage, right? There are several years before somebody's ready to get married in which they should start considering and thinking about who they want to be when they are ready to get married and what they want to look for when they are ready to get married. You don't one day wake up and say, I'm ready to get married and this is exactly what I want and I will find somebody tomorrow that has these criteria. I propose that you have to go back several years, and this is where the parents start to come into play especially. Parents should be having open dialogue with their kids. I'd say, it's different for every family as I said, but maybe even 5 years before they're really ready to get married. So that they can start building a relationship with one another, they can start knowing each other, and they can start understanding what the other needs and the other wants. And a child can start understanding, well, in my family, actually, this is something that's so important that I can't go outside of that. A lot of times this is culture. In my family, my mother or father, they only speak Farsi, and they're not really going to be comfortable with me marrying somebody that doesn't speak Farsi. That might be it. Whatever it is, these conversations need to happen, start happening. The dialogue needs to start opening up several years before the person is sitting there saying, tomorrow, I'm ready, Mom, I'm ready to look for somebody, help me. And then the person starts developing these thoughts and these processes and starts building that maturity within themselves to get to the day where they're mature. You don't wake up and be mature enough for marriage where you've never even talked about it in a real way. And all you've seen is the depictions in media and whatever else it might be, your non-Muslim relationships. These conversations need to be happening early on. And then even before the day that they're ready to get married, there's a huge benefit to having halal conversations under the umbrella of marriage proposals and under the umbrella of the parental supervision, so that they can start the process and start seeing, okay, perhaps I thought what was really important to me was X, Y, Z, but I talked to 3 people now that all had Z, and that didn't help their akhlaq any. Maybe instead of Z, what I really needed was something else. So this process of talking to somebody is very, very beneficial. I talk to a lot of parents who marriage comes up, or somebody asks me to talk to the parent because I know the daughter or whatever, and I say, okay, well, are you guys interested in talking to somebody regarding your daughter? And they say, my daughter's not ready. She just started college or whatever it might be, she's not ready. And I tell them, I'm not telling you to marry this person tomorrow. I'm telling you to allow your daughter to start having a conversation, because then when she meets the right person, she will know what she's looking for. Because when she's ready, okay, she graduated from her master's, she's 25, she's ready today, and she's never talked to somebody, it can be a lot more challenging and add another 5 years of figuring it out than you had been anticipating. Because this is a process. Most people are not going to marry the first person they speak with, or the second, or maybe even the 4th or 5th. It takes a while, and this process should be under the family umbrella earlier to help facilitate that and to help the child understand, or the young adult to understand, when they have met the right person, what that would mean for them. And alhamdulillah, if they meet the right person way earlier than they're ready, again, they don't have to get married tomorrow. They can work on whatever, if it's meant to be and it's a blessing from Allah, then there is a solution to this. Whether it means delaying for some time and just having it in the back of their mind that this is something in their future, whatever it may be. But I discourage people from withholding even the discussions about marriage until they feel that this person is absolutely ready to get married, because that really, really hinders their ability down the line. And the process is very frustrating. The process of finding a spouse is very, very frustrating. It could be a lot of doubts, there could be a lot of challenges, there could be a lot of embarrassment. A lot of boys I see have a very hard time getting the strength to stand up and say, I want to talk to your daughter about marriage. A lot of girls are challenged with the process because the people they get are not at all the type of people that they want, and they don't know how to approach. This is a very frustrating and challenging process, but let me tell you, the frustration is a lot easier to handle at 20 than at 30. Because a 20-year-old who's frustrated understands that they still have a time process to go through, and that they're not going to lose the hope or whatever. But when you're 30, 35, and you're starting to get that frustration is coming about, you're in a lot harder position. So that's another reason that I encourage younger people to have discussions, because at the younger age they can tolerate this process better and not fall into a lack of hope and that frustration that is irreconcilable. I have seen way too many young men between 25 and 30 who just start talking to people, and it's just too hard for them to, at 25 and 30, to say, okay, I'm gonna talk to you about marriage or whatever it might be, and the process itself is so frustrating that it hurts their spirituality. It makes them go away from the entire Islamic process of getting marriage. And again, at 20, it's much easier to improve yourself. So if you're going to be at 20 years old and start looking around and say, okay, well, what is it that I need to improve? If I want somebody that has X trait, I've sought those people with that trait, and they weren't interested because they said I was not patient enough, or I was not this enough, or I was not that enough. This gives you the opportunity at the younger age to work on yourself, because it is a constant reflection of the self. So now that I've talked about timing, I'm going to go into attitude towards the marriage process. We have this Western notion that marriage is a ball and chains, it's shackles, it's enslavement. It's very common, it's a joke that everybody makes. Once you get married, your bachelor life is over, your whole life is over. And then you're married, and that's you're in prison from there on out. And then Hallmark cards. You go to, the wedding aisle in Hallmark, and half the cards are jokes about the man having shackles on top of the wedding cake or whatever it might be. So this notion of marriage being a restriction upon us is very problematic. And when I hear Muslim men especially making jokes about marriage being an end of a life or enslavement, it's very problematic. Because as a Muslim, marriage is necessarily a form of liberation. Marriage is necessarily the first time you are free to be who you are, utterly and completely, with no judgment, with somebody else that can have compassion for you and forgive you and not judge you and all these things. And we go through high school, we have all these restrictions. Don't wear this, don't be with those people, don't go there. And then you continue up until marriage gives you a little bit of freedom and ability. You suddenly go to the movies whenever you want because you have a companion with you that's always there with you. I mean, there's a lot of freedoms that come with marriage, but that conflicts with the Western notion of what marriage is. And therefore, it's very confusing for young Muslims. Because they're saying, marriage is a restriction, but my whole life's been a restriction. So I'm giving up on all of it. The whole thing becomes very frustrating. And so we have to get ourselves out of the mindset that marriage is a restriction. It has to be the liberation. It has to be what frees us. And that's what's intended on the Islamic doctrine. And so we have to improve our attitude towards marriage. And within that umbrella, we also have to work on our intention when we seek marriage. The starting point of a dialogue between a male and a female should be that this dialogue is for the purpose of marriage. That's very hard for people to say. It's very hard. People will start talking and they are not ready to say, I'm talking to you for marriage, because they don't want to say, Because they think, a lot of men especially think that what that means is, am I proposing to you right now? Because as soon as you say marriage, the question is, are you proposing? And obviously, that's not how we do it. When you say we're talking about marriage, that's just the beginning. That's the first step. It should be the first step. But a lot of people are so hesitant to say that they start talking without making that clear. And what does that do? Creates two people on two different places. One person thinks that this is absolutely about marriage. Another person is thinking, this is about, maybe I'm like investigating, but I'm not committed to actually talking about marriage, and I can just stop talking to you tomorrow without making anything clear to you, and walk away. This is especially true with social media, because it is so easy for people across gender lines to have casual conversation. And with casual conversation, there's a lot of risk that there is no intention ever set out, and it creates a lot of confusion for people. I've seen a girl recently came to me and said, you know, you're friends with so-and-so, is he looking for marriage? I mean, what's his story? Because we've been talking online for a very long time now, and I'm waiting for when he's coming to speak to my parents what's happening. I, on the other hand, know he's not interested. He was at one point. He started messaging her, but it fizzled out and it never became clear to her. And she's left in this very, very difficult position. And in the meanwhile, reputations are ruined and emotions are hurt, and it creates a lot of confusion and frustration for the marriage process ultimately. So this intention has to be stated out loud from the beginning. If you cannot say that my intention is for marriage, then there's a fundamental problem with the level of maturity. And you have to figure out, are you mature enough to approach this topic or not? So we have to be very cognizant of this challenge between the Western notion of how you start these dialogues for some extended period of time, just chit-chatting, and then the Islamic notion that when you do have these conversations, that your intention has to be clear and you have to act in the right way. And with social media, I'll also say, one problem I see a lot of is when I ask, like a brother, I'll say, you know, why don't you consider, say her name's Zainab, why don't you consider Zainab? She's perfect for you. Your families know each other. She's a perfect age for you. She has a lot in common with you. He'll say, she's like my sister. So many people use this expression, he's like my brother. That is because, with social media especially, the gender lines have been crossed and we see each other so much. It's not just in the masjid where you keep your distance. It's, you are constantly interacting with each other, whether or not even it's with each other. You're constantly seeing the other person's posts. And you might be making judgments about what their posts imply about them or whatever it might be. And I have a lot of people saying, oh, I'm not interested in her. I saw a picture one time. In the picture, her hijab was a little bit loose. And she was wearing a 3/4 sleeve shirt, and this or that. And the girl say, yeah, I saw he liked somebody's Facebook and that girl is not appropriate. Or these types of things that are starting to happen that are destroying prospects. They don't even talk to each other anymore because they see each other through social media and their conduct. Even from 3 years ago, they'll remember. This person was in high school and liked this person's page and all these things. It's incredible, the consequences of these little things that especially the older generation never had to deal with. And so it's very important for children to understand there is a huge repercussion with crossing these boundaries for their long-term ability to find a spouse. And part of the challenge is in the Western notion that we have of guys and girls can be friends. I'm not going to go into whether or not that's correct or not. Aside from the halal and haram aspects of those types of relationships, these building of a friendship, whether or not if you build a friendship with a guy who you always see because you're part of the same community, your families always know each other, you always see each other, that guy, all of his friends now know everything about you that guy also knew. It becomes a chain effect, and before you know it, in a 100-mile radius, everybody has an opinion about you, That isn't necessarily who you are today or what you meant to portray about yourself. And so there is a huge repercussion to building these friendships without consideration of the long-term impact that that can have. After intention, when it comes to attitude, the most important thing I think is tawakkul. As I said, the marriage process is very frustrating, it's very challenging. There's a lot of disappointment, there's a lot of embarrassment, and it can impact one's courage to do it again, to go through the process again, be emotionally hurt and just try again. But without tawakkul, without trusting that God is going to take care of you or provide for you or help you make the right decision, you can be utterly lost. You're looking for something and you have no idea if it's ever going to come. Without tawakkul, without trusting that God is taking care of you and God is watching over your decisions, God is helping you make the decisions, it is very, very confusing and much more difficult. And tawakkul and the trust that you have in God really does make an impact on your ultimate decision, whether you say yes or no. It makes a huge impact. And I say this from personal experience. People ask me all the time how at 20 years old I knew after a very, very short period of time that I was going to marry the person that I married. It's people, they're always, especially when people have been looking for 3, 4, 5, 6 years and they're like, I still don't know if I'm ever going to find somebody. How did you know within X number of days that that was your spouse? And I have to say that there is something, once you have tawakkul, once you finally say, okay, God, you take care of me. I don't know, I need your help, I need your guidance. Immediately after I said that, I absolutely knew. And it's not okay, we talked and we fell in love and then I felt like, okay. No, there is something that God can place within a relationship that gives you the certainty and the security to know that this is a relationship that God has created for you. That this is a blessing that He has put for you and now you take care of it. Now it is your responsibility. But that is something that God created for you. And when you know that it's that God that created for you, what is there to doubt? What is there to debate over it for months and months and years and long engagements or whatever it might be? That tawakkul is very, very important. And I honestly have to say, I've talked to a lot of happily married couples. Every one of them said the same thing, that they felt God's presence in the relationship. And that when they didn't, they talked to other people. And when I talked to people and I said, okay, why did it break up? Did you ever feel that God was part of that relationship? I've always heard no. So, and it's interesting, Hazrat Khadija, she had said no to so many people. Everybody came for her, of all statures of life and people. She was considered, the princess, she was considered so desirable and she continued to say no. But when asked, how did you know to say yes to the Prophet? She said that her judgment was guided by Allah. I don't think that this is a notion that is lost. It's only for Hazrat Khadija, or only for infallibles, only for Hazrat Fatima. I think that this is something that God has created and will put for anybody who puts their trust in God. So we've gone through the timing and we've gone through the attitude process, the attitude that needs to be developed for this process, and now the actual process itself. So the practical steps. The first step I propose when somebody is considering marriage is to start, you have to obviously identify some potential candidates. But before doing that, you have to start developing your list. The list of your needs, and a list of your wants. And in that you find the traits that you're looking for. The needs are the non-compromisables. And if this list is down to here, then there's a problem. You know, you have 3, 4, 5, 6 non-compromisables. And then you have all these other things that you would want in a person that's compromisable if they don't have every single one of them. but these are the two lists that you're working with, and you compare this list with the potential candidate before you start talking to them, or early on, very early on in the process of talking to them. And my belief is that if you have your non-compromisables in a person, and you have the majority of your compromisables in a person, that is a good recipe. That you don't need all of the full list in order to have a successful marriage. And now again, age comes into play here again. If you are younger and you have a list of compromisables and non-compromisables, and you get married young, you are more likely to grow together so that all those things that you wanted, you can grow together and build with each other. So that list gets enhanced through your relationship with the other person, because you explain to them, this is something that bothers me and this is something that you can improve on, or you reflect on yourself and see how you can improve yourself. So the younger those lists are enhanced. But this is a very logical approach, and some people don't like this. They don't like the thought of creating a list and checking it off and seeing if a person matches that or not. Because we have this notion that you should be in love with the person you marry, and that love should guide the way. The risk of ignoring that logical approach, the risk of setting the list aside, is huge. Because you start down the path with someone that it cannot work with because a non-compromisable is not met. And I'm going to go back to culture because that's the most common one that I've seen. Two people start talking to each other, an Arab and an Iranian. And at least one of those families will never accept a person of a different racial background. And they feel like they are a very good match, and they will spend 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, 18 months trying to work it out, trying to convince the parents, trying to do whatever it might take to make it happen. And after all that heartache, all those efforts, all those years or months spent on this, it doesn't work. And then it's a big disappointment. And so it's very, very important that we don't go down a path that does not have those fundamentals in line. And when you start a discussion with somebody with those things already checked off, then you can build a relationship. It isn't difficult to, after you have all the fundamentals with that person, to start caring for each other, and then you can make a logical decision. If you're in love with somebody, logic goes out the door. You'll forgive that person for lying. You'll forgive that person for having a rude behavior. You'll forgive that person for doing all these things that you fundamentally would not have accepted had you taken the logical approach, but now you are blinded by this emotion. So it's very important to keep that logical approach in mind. And also there's two types of love when we talk about falling in love in a marriage. There's the love that is in the presence of God, that is blessed by God, and then there's the love that we commonly see in soap operas. And so it is very important, and I'm going back to that same point that Hazrat Khadija made, that you feel that the presence of God within the relationship, because that is the type of love that is eternal. That's the type of love that's going to improve your spirituality. That's going to make you a better person. That's going to make you a better family. That is the foundation for a good life, is the one that has a marriage with Allah as part of the equation, not Allah as a side note to the equation. And then I would say, as far as the process of finding a spouse, we have all the resources in the world right now to investigate our spouse, our potential candidates. Go on Twitter, go on Facebook, go on their friends' Twitters and see what they're tagging, where their pictures are on so-and-so's page. And then we also have their, we have mutual friends with them, let's go ask around for this person and that person, and then go to the families. You start asking about their families, and you start investigating for, you could go on and on. I propose that in this process, and especially for parents who are considering for their children, in this process of considering whether or not your child should start speaking to somebody, that the investigation not be that open-ended. Because the question of whether or not this person could be a good mother or a good father, if the person can be a companion in 30 years, does not matter if they had a picture in high school that was not up to your standards when you're, 5 years later. The questions that need to be asked through the investigation process are those that are going to matter in 20 or 30 years. What is your lifestyle? What are your priorities? What is this person's family like? Not, did they go to prom or whatever it might be. These questions that go too far in investigating somebody are really detrimental to both yourself and to others, and it is much better, it's healthier for the relationship, because let's say you finally decide to marry a person that you've investigated way too much and you've said, okay, well, I guess it doesn't matter. There's a thing in the back of your mind that has this other information that is an unnecessary impact on the relationship. If that past experience of this person is not going to impact their future, then what is the point in looking into it too much? So I encourage people, especially once they start talking, one of the very first questions are, have you ever been engaged? Have you ever been this or that? The question really should be, is there anything about your past that I should know? Is there anything in your past that is going to affect your future? Is there anything in your past that you feel like you should tell me? That is a very different question than, how many people have you spoken to? How long were you engaged? How many months did you talk to so-and-so? Because that line of questioning never ends and there is just no benefit. And then I would add that there's a lot of notions about the timeline for young people. A lot of young people say, oh, I would never marry somebody without being engaged 1 or 2 years. They add these years and years and years to the engagement process or talking process because there's so much doubt. There's so much doubt. What if I'm picking the wrong person? And I go back to, if you felt love's presence in that relationship, that doubt shouldn't be there anymore. But I also add that if you are talking to somebody for more than 3 months or 6 months, or I'm not going to put a hard number on it, but more than a short period of time, and you still don't know, then you might not be doing it right. You might not be asking the right questions. You might not be, before you know it, you're going to be in love with somebody and you haven't figured out the fundamentals. And that's something you never want. You don't want 6 months into the discussion to then realize, I really care about this person, but we really haven't talked about how this whole family dynamic thing is going to work, or if it could work. And so the conversation, that's why intention is important. From the first conversation, you say, this is what my intention is. So not 6 months in, you talk about intention and then figure out what's going on when you already have an emotional connection. So although it's shocking for a lot of people in the Western connotation of how long a relationship should be, to go on that long, the successful relationships I've seen do not need to go on that long just to figure out if this person can be your spouse. Now it's different to say, you got engaged young because you just met the person very young and you had to wait some time, or there's some family issues or some long distance issues or whatever it might be. That's different. I'm talking about I still don't know after 9 months. It means there's fundamentally something at issue with the way the communications are happening, and maybe you need to revisit it. And then finally, the process needs to be very customized to family needs. There's a lot of challenges that I've already mentioned with young men having a hard time going through the formal process when social media makes it so easy to bypass that, to start to get to know somebody. But the family process is very important for the long-term longevity of the relationship. And bypassing the family process, the formalities that exist, is the recipe for disaster. But I encourage the parents, especially the fathers, to show kindness and to show compassion to the young men that are trying to make this effort. To make it harder on somebody who has gotten the courage to come and approach the family, to make it harder, I don't believe this is correct. I don't believe this is a benefit to anybody, not to that young man's future, not to your daughter's future. There's a lot of baggage, and I've seen a lot of people with good daughters and good males that come, really, really good people, and the father makes it so difficult that it shatters this man's confidence. and they're not going to end up together because there's not a family relationship, that's fine, but the long-term effect on this guy is not fair either. So I have to encourage the process to be followed, but for parents to try to be an asset in that process and not a hindrance. So there's much more to say about marriage. Obviously, we can go on and on about what a good marriage is and how to have a good marriage and how to be a good spouse and how to build a family, but obviously I'm not going to go there, and I'm not qualified to go there. But now that we've talked about the timing and the attitude and the process, I pray y'all have set up important first steps to be considered, and with those in mind, the process could become much more simple and much more clear and a lot more compassionate. I pray that everybody, that Greece families are able to benefit from this, and that the young children, or the young ones, are able to, have ease in this process, because it is certainly challenging. Salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
Thank you so much, sister, for this very useful talk.
Turn that. Yeah, now it's good. Yeah, turn that.
Just, I'd like to make a quick comment before inviting Said forward. Allah tells us in the Quran, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. سبحان الذي خلق الأزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض ومن أنفسهم ومما لا يعلمون. And that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who has created everything in pairs, everything on the earth, and for every soul, even from that which they don't know. And this is one of the sunnahs of Allah, sunnat Allah. This is the way that Allah has created the creation. And this topic is such an important topic, and I encourage all of you, especially the older generation, because at this point in time, the way that this issue is being handled is in your hands. It's not in the hands of the young people generally, it's in the hands of the older people. They're the ones who facilitate the marriages of their youth. For many years, I've been giving talks at this center and at Masjid Imam Ali. And out of all of these years, I've been asked so many times, I can't remember, to discuss the issue of marriage, which I never have, and I never do, as I'm not married, so I will never. I know, but really, I will never sit here and speak about a subject that I'm not active in. I can't do that. It's not proper and it's not acceptable. But I just wanted to make that comment and thank the sister very much for this wonderful speech. And with that, I'd like to bring Sayyid Sabri forward, as he has something he would like to present to our dear sister. Sallallahu Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
برادران و خواهران بزرگوار، السلام علیکم جمیعا و رحمت الله و برکاته. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. First, I have to thank Hajiya Khanum, Sister Fatima Mashouf, because of her informative and practical speech. And also, thank you very much for coming all the way from Los Angeles to our program and our masjid. Jazakumullah khaira. May Allah accept from you. Please recite the salawat for her security and hers. Louder. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. در دعای ابو حمزه سومالی هر شبی گاهگاهی یک قسمتش رو عرض می‌کنیم. یه گوشه ما رو بیداریم و می‌بینیم میشیم. یک قسمتش رو که امشب یک زمزمه بکنیم قبل از اینکه دعا رو با هم دیگه بکنیم. امام سجاد علیه السلام می‌فرمایند که خدایا تو بخشنده هستی. این علتی هست که من دعا میکنم. اگر من از تو طلب مغفرت و آمرزش میکنم، این نیست که من از تو طلبکار هستم که تو من رو ببخشی. این نیست که برگردن تو واجب باشه یا دینی داری نسبت به من که من رو باید ببخشی. نه، اینطور نیست. و توجهت الیک به حاجتی و توسلت الیک من غیر استحقاق لاستماعک منی. خدایا من چیزی برگردن تو ندارم، اما بل لثقتی به کرمک و سکونی الی صدق وعدک. جمعه دوم رمضانتون هم داره تمام میشه. این زمزمه رو با هم میکنیم و انشالله بعد دعا میکنیم. من خیلی مطمئنم که توی جلسات با صفای شما دعا مستجاب میشه. خود این اطمینانی که شما عزیزان دارید، یقینی دارید که به دعاتون مستجاب میشه، از این راه دراز بلند میشید میاد اینجا، این ارزش داره. خدا اینو میخواد. با کریمان کارها دشوار نیست. خدایا علت این که دعا میکنیم این هست که به تو اعتماد داریم. علت این که طلب توبه میکنیم به جهت اینه که تو رو میشناسیم. به به. و لیس من صفاتک یا سیدی. این چقدر زیبا از این فراز خواهر و برادر. و لیس من صفاتک یا سیدی ان تؤمر بالسؤال و تمنع العطیه. خدایا این از صفات تو نیست که ما رو دعوت بکنیم به دعا کردن، اما نوبت بخشش که میشه نبخشی. این صفات تو نیست. و انت المنان بالعطیات علی اهل مملکتک. تو از همه بخشنده تر هستی بر کسانی که حرف تو را امتثال بکنن، بر کسانی که میان مسجد و سر بر سجده میگذارن، سر بر تراب میگذارن. حالا در این لحظات باقی مانده عصر جمعه دوم رمضان دست بندگیمون رو به دعا بلند میکنیم، خاضعانه و خاشعانه. خدایا همونطور که در دعای ابو حمزه سومالی گفتیم، هیچ طلبی ما از تو نداریم، اما اعتماد داریم به این که گفتی دعا کن، اجابت میکنیم. اللهم انا نسألك و ندعوك باسمك العظیم الاعظم الاعز الاجل الاکرم الهنا بحق قرآنك المستحکم و بحق نبیك المکرم استجب دعاءنا یا الله.